Palms it down to Scholl, though, and he faked, and he kicks, and he goes! Awesome.
Oh, there is the bloke Jimmy was talking about, and then Daniel goes for goal. He's just got the 3 Brownlow votes.
Coleman, he missed his chance last week. It's great to say the name Coleman kicking goals.
Hello, I'm Damien Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by Sportsbet. 10 matches remain of the home and away season and a multitude of finals possibilities are still in play. Matthew Lloyd, as always, is with me. Lordo, welcome. The Blues were the big losers of round 17.
They were, Damo. It's been a disappointing year for the Carlton Football Club in the end because I think their last couple of weeks, they scrounged a win against Sydney last week, but it's been their first quarters. It's been 8-0 over the last 2 weeks, and this against the bottom team in the competition. Yes, I know Adelaide are improved in their form, but I thought their midfield was just destroyed by the Adelaide midfield, who's been beaten up most weeks. You had Crouch, 28 disposals, Gibbs, 27, Laird, 27, Scholl, the young man, 24, and it dropped down to Sam Walsh, who had 22 disposals. So they were beaten up on the inside, they were beaten up on the outside, they were outworked. And I reckon Andrew Russell, the fitness coach, and David Teague have to put their heads together and say, why aren't our players stimulated early in games? And why do we have so many momentum swings? Because we concede far too many goals in quick succession, and it's a disappointing way to end the year.
You've rattled off quite a few problems there, serious problems. They've got to make some big decisions, don't they? There's a big decision looming on Eddie Betts, who is contracted for 2021. In your eyes, should he be there?
I wouldn't go with Eddie Betts next year, Damo. I just think that it's the toughest role to play in football as that small forward, and he's just lost that leg speed. I thought some of his pressure acts were pretty good yesterday, but my big thing is their midfield. I look at, you've got Walsh and Cripps, but they've just got too many foot soldiers. Guys like, obviously, Kennedy, Cunningham, Gibbons, Nunes. It falls down to those sort of players. They need an elite midfielder, and they should have the chequebook out, trying to go from the top and work their way down. Zach Williams may be that player.
Yeah, OK. Full credit to the Crows for turning their initially disastrous season around with 3 good wins to close the year off.
Yeah, fantastic. I think Matthew Nicks, he looked lost at times throughout this year, and now they're playing a really good, strong brand of football. They're hard at it. They're moving the ball with a lot greater speed, and they've got some players like Himmelberg in particular who... and Scholl, the likes, the young kids. The great thing about them, we'll talk about North later, they know where they're heading. They've been pretty strong on where they're heading, and it's been a wonderful finish to the season.
The Bulldogs got the win they wanted against Hawthorn, but just judging body language, and it sometimes is dangerous to do that post-match, you were left with the feeling, weren't you, Lotto, that man there, Luke Beveridge, wanted the score to be a little bit higher for the percentage reasons that relate to the push for the 8.
Yeah, they lost the second half to Hawthorn. It was 5-4 Hawthorn's way, and he's probably looking for a little bit more percentage than what they got. And now we go to the race for the 8, and I've looked at my race for the 8, Damo, and I've got the Giants missing out and the Demons missing out, but a little bit of a different order. I think the West Coast Eagles will finish 5th. The Dogs will finish 6th by beating Freo. I've got the Pies finishing 7th by beating the Suns but losing to Port in the last game. And even if the Saints lose, I think their percentage will still hold off the Demons and also the Giants. So I think that's the way it'll fall. No change to the 8 to what we've seen at the moment.
Caleb Daniels put together some sort of season for the Bulldogs, and you've highlighted him regularly on this program on a Monday morning. But his kicking skill, either side of the body, Lordo, is exquisite, but it's his decision-making which has elevated him into the elite this year.
Yeah, and I hope he's in the All-Australian team. I think he's put that sort of season together. Hawthorn tried to put some time into him yesterday, didn't make a difference. His numbers were 28 disposals, 10 marks, 7 inside 50s, 546 metres gained, and it's his ability. There's a bit of Sam Mitchell about him. That's a comparison, and some of these passes, he never panics, he never rushes. And I thought late in the game, this one, Tim O'Brien switches across the play, and that ability to read the play, Damo, you can't teach that. And I don't think he was going to be drafted at one stage, but they watched him through for South Australia through the carnival, and they said, how can you overlook this guy? He may be small, but not many have got the craft that he has.
Yep. The depth of the Bulldogs midfield, although it elevates them into what must be considered a premiership chance. You've got worries about their forward line, and you've also referenced their back line, but the guys who are getting the job done inside are elite, and they are premiership winning material potentially.
But they're dangerous. I've got them playing Collingwood in the first week of the finals, and it's going to be a massive one if that occurs, because the midfield of both Collingwood and the Dogs is pretty deep. Side bottom. Will he get back for that final? I'll ask you in a moment about that. But Bontempelli, McRae, Smith, Hunter, Liberatore, Dunkley, all in super form, and that makes them a very, very dangerous proposition. I like their back line, like their midfield. It's just Josh Bruce, Norton. Can they kick enough goals in a final? That's a big question mark.
The Hawks have announced publicly now, Lotto, that Sean Burgoyne will go into next year a 20th AFL season, and it's an amazing, fantastic football story. He most likely will end up with 400 career games, which puts him into rare atmosphere, doesn't it? But it does, though, the list decision itself fly in the face of where the Hawks have been positioning themselves publicly, and also with decisions in contrast to what they've made in recent years when it comes to the decisions to oust from the football club Luke Hodge and Sam Mitchell and Jordan Lewis.
Yeah, I was stunned yesterday when I heard the news over the weekend that they've gone with Burgoyne again next year. You don't want to shoot Bambi at all, but I don't think he's playing well enough to command any games next year. They're going to be taking games away from some young players. So I'll come back to you. What's behind it? You hear talks of, he's going to have an off-field role, so they could be moving money around with caps and soft caps changing. Do you think it's that, or is it the milestone 400 games? What's behind it?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's a relationship he's got with the coach, which is clearly different to the one that the coach had with the other three players I just mentioned. And it's fair to say there is genuine dismay from that quarter of those ex-players of the footy club. I mean, and it's only right in my eyes that they are questioning why Sean Burgoyne has been given the extra season, maybe the extra 2 seasons that they weren't given. And as we know, they are the most celebrated players we're talking about here, particularly when you refer to Hodge and Mitchell. And Burgoyne's in that category too, don't get me wrong. But there is confusion, Lordo, amongst the older school Hawthorn person who's lived the decision that Alistair Clarkson's been prepared to make in recent years. Yeah,
as there should be too. Well, the Lions, they secured a top 2 spot yesterday, Damo, and they were headed by the Sydney Swans, who I really admire the season the Swans have had with their injuries and the young kids that they're playing. But what good sides do, the Brisbane Lions, they kicked 6 in the last quarter in tough conditions, but they found a way to win. And they've found a few little good players too. There's Coleman here, just the class of Coleman in those conditions. They've lost Harris Andrews, but their defence has stood up pretty well. And the depth through their midfield. Lachie Neale didn't have a big day. We'll talk about the job Clark did on him. But they didn't really matter. Cameron Damo has looked much sharper the last couple of weeks after struggling with injury and maybe dropping the bottom lip for a little while. And Eric Hipwood, looks to have had a little bit more confidence kicking goals like this yesterday. So they've had it, like Port Adelaide, they've had a wonderful season.
Yeah, they have. You mentioned Lachie Neale. He was down on the lofty heights that he showed this year. Ryan Clark rode him really tightly. It was clearly a plan from the Swans to do it this way. And did you take anything out of it? And is it a blueprint essentially for what clubs will need to do in order to shut down the Lions in the finals? I can be old school at times, but I loved it. A lot of coaches will say you can't tag anymore because that just throws out our system, that throws out our structure. But I think you take out the best player in the game. Why not do it? And the Swans were within 7 points in the last quarter, and they were just blown away late. And I just thought Neale and Zorko, you just see the experienced players, though, how they support each other and assist each other. And Neale was good. He tried to help out his teammates at times. But as I said earlier in the year, the umpires have got to pay a few more free kicks. So if Clark takes his eyes off the ball like he did a number of times, pay the free kick because it's unfair on those ball-winning midfielders. Yep. Now, he's learning off, arguably, the greatest tagger of all time in Brett Kirk, Ryan Clark, and you wanted to highlight this vision at half-time of the two talking. That's Kirk in the pink runner's vest there with the cap on, and he's clearly illustrating how to do it.
Oh, he would have been working with him all week, and I just wanted to bring that vision to the table, saying you couldn't have a better mentor. And we never hear much from Brett Kirk. We see Dean Cox copying it in the box, and we see Jared McVeigh and Stevie J. But Brett Kirk, wonderful mentor, one of the great tags we've ever seen, and it was a pretty well executed job by Clark yesterday.
Well, do you have an issue with this tackle that Neil has delivered on Nick Blakey? Because I do. I actually do. The ball is dislodged. The tackle motion is completed, and Blakey does hit the ground pretty hard. Now, people might say that the tackle motion itself only got his shoulders to the ground, but ultimately Blakey's head did seem to bounce off the turf. And the change in adjudication on such matters made after the Burgoyne and Dangerfield incident in round 2, I would think might just have him under some sort of a Michael Christian match review office scrutiny today. I don't expect him to miss a game of footy, but it's not something that the Brownlow medal favourite wants to have over his head.
Yeah, I thought Blakey had the ball in his hand still and looked to execute the tackle. He didn't realise the ball had gone, and he's just fortunate that Blakey come back on the ground and continued to play, Damo. So, yeah, I think a fine at most, but I think he'll probably get nothing for that.
The Demons have thrown a curveball of sorts into the finals race. They've certainly put in jeopardy the team they beat on the weekend, GWS's chances. And once again, Lotto, we've said this a few times, when they're on song, the Demons, they look as though they can be quite damaging.
Yeah, Simon Goodwin rode every single kick, every bump. I was just watching him. You can see he's so invested in what his team's doing, but the frustrating thing for them, they've lost to Sydney and they've lost to Fremantle in Cairns the previous 2 weeks, and then they come out and play with this sort of passion, kick a big score. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to miss the finals. In a year they should have made it. They got the talent to do it. Their injuries have been fine. They haven't lost too many players. But like the team they played, Damo, it's going to be a wasted season for Melbourne.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the decisions that Leon Cameron and others at the Giants made with match team selection going into that game were staggering to me. Stephen Coniglio, the captain, was dropped. They waited until the second last game of the season to make a significant statement of that type. And even post-match, it didn't work. They lost a game of footy. Leon Cameron's threatening more changes this week.
We made that really tough call, a really tough call. But if there has to be more tough calls next week, there will be, because our season's been like that. We haven't turned up, so we need to pick our best team for next Friday night against St Kilda. And if that means there's players there that have been out of form for the last 2 or 3 weeks, it doesn't matter who you are.
Well, I really dislike the decision to drop Stephen Coniglio. I disliked it for a number of reasons. If you're going to make a statement on selection, do it earlier than round 17. And don't do it to the captain, who is invested as anyone's ever been in a footy club, particularly with the people inside the Giants. Now, I know there's form issues, but I reckon there's an obligation to protect him from the stigma that's now attached to him forevermore of being dropped as a captain. And I think other players before him could have been dropped. And I want to put to you, with those words lined up there from Leon Cameron, do you think Jeremy Cameron is now in the gun for round 18?
Yeah, you get the sense that there's more coming, and there might be another big name coming this week, and whether it's Cameron or not, you just wonder whether he won't be at the club next year, Jeremy Cameron, if he is to be the one that misses round 18. I think Leon Cameron's asking a lot of questions of his players. I think he needs to ask them of himself, and he needs to ask himself, why aren't my players who are elite players playing well? Why can't my midfield, on paper, who should beat another team's midfield, winning? Why is Cameron playing disinterested footy? Why is Toby Green not at his best? Why is Hopper fallen away? Why has my captain had to be dropped? So he's not getting the best out of his players, and he should be asking hard questions of himself as well, because his team really has underperformed, the biggest underachiever of the season.
You did your predictions on the 8 and how it will look a few moments ago. Let's see what Nathan Brown of Sportsbet thinks of the Demons' chances to sneak into the 8.
Yeah, thanks, Damo. The Demons had a great win. They put themselves in the frame for finals, but they've got to ride for luck here. They have to win their game and hope that the Bulldogs lose or the Magpies lose both. It's unlikely, but Fremantle playing really good footy at the moment. They do play the Dogs. It's all about the premiership market, though, and the Tigers at the top of the tree at the moment. Where do the challenges come from? The challenge will come hard. We thought Geelong were a big challenger. They need to lick their wounds. But Port Adelaide have been around that $8 or $7 mark, still representing some value and playing some good footy. with some home finals. West Coast, the Drifter, they were a $4 favourite only 3 weeks ago. They've gone to Queensland and they're blown out to 11. Now, the Brownlow medal market, we think Lachie Neale can't be beaten. He is very, very short in the Brownlow medal market, so you might like to look at the Brownlow without Neale. And I think Travis Boak would have voted regularly throughout the season, so too Petrarca, and don't discount Jackson McRae to get a lot of votes this year. But this pick for me is Travis Boak. Good luck if you're punting on this, and please gamble responsibly. Back to you, Damo.
Thank you to Brownie from Sportsbet there for that. He referenced Lordo, the Port Adelaide team. They had a walk in the park against Essendon, an easy 50-point win. It could have been so much heavier than that. And their midfield's been in a nice vein of form in recent weeks, Lordo. The three guys who did the job on the weekend in a big way were Boak, who's been doing it all year, Rockcliffe and Wines. Yeah, and I enjoyed Pepper's game, who had less disposals but still was really important and pretty tough at it. But, yeah, in those conditions, it was like an 80-point win, what Port Adelaide did. I couldn't believe how clean they were in wet conditions. All those midfielders you speak of all kicked the goal, hit the scoreboard, and just watching some of these highlights, they just know what each other are doing. They're an experienced team now who have played a lot of football with each other. And we speak about how small Essendon's midfield is, and those big bodies of Port Adelaide, they did a number on the Bombers. There's been a few players missing from the Bombers, Lordo, but I do question the value that they've got to the big picture of the Essendon Football Club. And there's some really nice names on that list, but they've either been out of form or regularly injured or yet to establish themselves as leading AFL players, some of them on that list. And I'm not sure where they're at as a footy club, Lordo. We've both had strong views on this program throughout the course of the year on this footy club. You got yourself into a stoush last week inadvertently with comments you made, and John Worsfold didn't like what you said. Where do you see them now with one game remaining of this season? It's a really good question. Andrew McGrath's obviously the obvious one, who I think will captain the club one day and has been an elite player. He, along with Ridley, Draper, have probably been the three highlights of the season so far. But they've got to ask themselves where we are as a list, because you hear sometimes John Worsfold said, we're building towards, it's about a premiership. And then other weeks he says, well, we're 3 pre-seasons off Geelong. And then over the weekend, he spoke about how we had 10 players under 50 games. So there's been so many mixed messages. They have to work out where they are at and where they're going. And is it about... to me, I'd be taking every draft pick I can. No more bringing Shields, Stringer, Smith, Sards types in. Start growing their own, because I think it's a pretty long road back for Essendon. And they have to do it the right way from this point on. Yeah, and the words that John Worsfold has been issuing publicly are as confusing as the way he's coached the team in the back half of the year, Lordo. And I've been saying for some time now, I think they can respectfully announce this week that he's not coaching in round 18 just to let Ben Rutten start the massive task that he's now been left with, despite what was meant to happen with this coaching handover. Lordo, even the Dockers at the start of the year, when they were losing matches, they were still able to hold their form. And that form has been frank now, with 7 wins out of the 16 matches they've played. And I reckon that the way they've played in the past 6 to 8 weeks particularly, you can see a quick shot up the ladder, I reckon, as early as next year. Oh, it's been a great season. And what I love about them is they're a club who knows where they are and where they're going and the steps they need to get there. I think he's made some strong decisions, and we're going to get to it shortly. So you see Justin Longmuir, a coach totally in control of what he's doing, versus Rhys Shaw, a coach in press conferences after the games who took bereft of answers and really lost. Whereas I think he's just so measured, Longmuir. He's made tough decisions. When we take a look at the coaches' votes this year and who's got them, you don't see the same names. You don't see Nathan Fyfe. You don't see David Mundy. It's been actually kids, and it's been led by Brayshaw and Chera and Luke Ryan, who have been exceptional this year. Yeah, we'll just take a look at what you referenced there with regards to the coaches' votes in some of the Dockers' wins. And you go back to an early stage of the season when Brayshaw wrapped up in consecutive weeks some significant coaches' votes in a best-on-ground sense. And you're right, you're not seeing Walters and Fyfe there. And that's probably arguably the biggest positive for the Dockers out of 2020. Pretty bold from a young coach to walk up to Nathan Fyfe and say, and Walters and Mundy, and say, we need more from our kids. It's not about you anymore. It's winning games. It's a bit like Cripps at Carlton. The over-reliance is just so unhealthy, and it was like that with Nathan Fyfe.
And now that has all changed, and Fremantle are better for it. And I think Carlton should take a look at what Fremantle have done and do the same thing with Cripps.
Richmond fixed up Geelong early in round 17. A couple of big guys went down in Tom Lynch and Ivan Soldo. But the backline, Lordo, it just holds up every single week, no matter who's available and who's not available. Dylan Grimes has had one of his great career games. It's going to still be the key to what they do in the remainder of the year, that backline.
It is, and that only works if there's pressure forward. And I thought that Castagna, Daniel Rioli, their pressure further afield for these kicks to be long and high were brilliant. And on Geelong, not all is lost. I just think that coming in round 17 was a perfect time for that to happen, because Tom Hawkins, he's been the best player in the game, in my opinion, the last 6 weeks. He's been unstoppable. And instead of thinking we can rely on that week after week and then suddenly get shocked in a grand final like Lance Franklin was when he didn't have a great day, and I think Clarko said we can never have a reliance on one player like that ever again. I think it's come at a good time, and get Ablett, Selwood, Reece Stanley back into that team. Gary Rowan, who didn't play, they'll be a different outfit next time they play the Tigers, and it may be in a grand final.
Yep. Another team that got a big name back in on the weekend was West Coast with Nick Naitanui. He has put together some sort of season, Lordo. He has been the single biggest beneficiary of the 16-minute quarters. His body has stood up. He's impacting. Just have a look at some of these actions in this game against St Kilda and how he can read the play. He's beautifully skilled. He's never been a man to get big numbers when it comes to marks and handballs. But if you have a look at this handball here, just the way he flicks it out there to Gaff. The man is exquisitely talented, and he's at the peak of his powers. And to me, Lordo, he just needs to be a walk-up start as the All-Australian ruckman. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think he's had the biggest impact of any ruckman, and he might be the most important player to any team's fortunes come finals time, because it's going to be difficult for them to win the premiership from outside the top four and the travel factor and all those sorts of things. But with a fit and firing Naitanui, anything can happen with the West Coast Eagles.
Yep. Well, it wasn't a good night for Cats. It wasn't a good night for Cats supporters. But one particular fan just didn't seem to care.
This man, I've never seen anything like it. This guy did not care. I don't know who he's roped in, if it's his young son or who that is, but he didn't care what the scoreboard was doing. He had the night of his life there, that catter.
Hey, Lotto, thanks always for your time today on Access All Areas, and thanks for watching us on Access All Areas. We'll be back next Monday after the completion of round 18. The good thing is, mate, I'll hang up in a second, but I'm out of here as of